Hello, welcome to Nahashon Kimemia Live, and today we're going to talk about arming security guards in Kenya, and this one is going to be a response to an article written by Professor Hezron Mogambi. Beth Chebet, right? She left work at 8 p.m. That was on December 2018. She left after boarding a border with two ladies, right? And then the next day, I think, she was found by some boys grazing their cattle. She was found half naked, injuries on her head and her neck. She was dead. She worked for Granton Security Services and she was 34 years old. She worked at Society Stores Supermarket, Limuru. So today we're going to be talking about insecurity and we're going to be talking about security guards. And this story of Beth Chebet, it actually summarizes everything. That as a security guard, you face your own kind of insecurity because she left home alone and at work. And perhaps if she left at 6 p.m., things would not have been that bad. And then also, she died outside of work. Something that might affect us because we're not always security guards 24/7. I came up with this video today because of a friend of mine. He's called Michael, and he suggested that I do this video. He actually asked whether I support the army of security guards, and I thought that's a good idea for a video, so I have done this video. Thank you for all my 600 and more subscribers. Please continue subscribing. Thank you so much. For the guys who like my sweaters, it's 500 bob per sweater. So anyway, collective security. That was Beth Chebet, alone, murdered, found half naked. The police say she was most likely raped and then killed. Thank you, Kian, for following. I appreciate it. So now, let's look at our collective security, right? The Westgate attack in Westlands, 67 people dead. The Garissa University College attack, 147 people dead. The 1998 US Embassy bombings, over 200 people dead. And just recently, we had around 22 people dead at 14 Riverside, the Dusit 2 attack. And Moi asked a very important question back in the day. Kwani sisi ni kuku? Will you keep on dying? Insecurity is so rampant in the country. Something must be done. Is it right for the government to sit back and watch as its people die? Does it have a responsibility to do something? Why would we elect a government that cannot protect us? And so the government tries to do something. In this case, it suggests arming security guards. So the question is, will it work? People are debating about it, including Professor Hezron Mogambi of Nairobi University. Professor Hezron opposes this move. He says that it will add fuel to the fire. He says that it will increase crime. The question is, will it? Because something has to be done. So the argument by Professor Hezron Mogambi is that increasing firearms in civilian hands, it will lead to the deterioration of security in the country. And this is what he does. Like a true professor, he presents facts to support his case. And these are his facts. Small arms, they drive the wave of violent crime in the country, according to him. 1 in 100 civilians owns an illegal gun. Now think about it. Perhaps you're in the office, in your building, and there are thousands of people there, or hundreds of people. For every 100 people, there is one person who has an illegal gun. How safe do you feel right now? So he continues. The government confiscated 5,000 illegal firearms in 3 years. It sounds like a good figure. But that's only 5,000 in 3 years. How many are they out there? 800,000 illegal guns in civilian hands. So how secure do you feel right now? That close to 1 million people, close to, let's say 1 firearm for 1 million people, they have an illegal firearm. And we're waiting on there, waiting for the country to give us security. Other people have done some things to improve their own security. For example, the number of licensed gun owners in Kenya is what it was at 6,500 in 2016. Those are the number of licensed gun owners. The number of registered guns was 8,136 in 2017. So of course we have more registered guns than gun owners because some people own more than one gun. But then look at the figures. Only around 6,500 registered guns, legal guns, outside of the defense forces, right? Of the armed forces. 800,000 illegally in the country. So look at that ratio. And it makes you wonder. And this is what happens when more civilians have illegal guns than legal guns. Some bad things happen. I want to give an example of the Garissa attack. Remember this. The terrorists, when they got there, they summoned the students to get out of their bedrooms. Yes. And they told them to position themselves face down on the ground. And then they executed them. In some cases, they just shot them on sight. But in this case, they summoned the people out of their bedrooms and they told them to lay on the ground and they shot them. More people, is it right to live in a country where more bad people have guns than good people have? Don't we have a natural desire to protect ourselves? And the answer is yes. We all have a natural desire to protect ourselves. That's why we have a door. And that's why we lock the door. And for some of us, we lock it multiple times. And then we confirm and then reconfirm that the door is locked. Because we want to protect ourselves. That's why we know certain areas where we can run to when somebody enters the house. That's where some people, they have Somali swords in their house. Some people we all have different ways of protecting ourselves. Even taxi drivers. Because one was interviewed some time back by the Nation media. I think it was Daily Nation. And this is what he said. Most taxi operators in Nairobi, they carry knives for protection against criminals. Most people who own cars, right? Many of them, not most of them, they have Somali swords somewhere within the car. Or they have something that they can use to protect themselves. Because it's a natural desire. We want an advantage over the bad people. Or even if we don't have an advantage, we want a fighting chance. But we have more people, 800,000 with illegal guns and only 6,500 with legal ones. So what kind of fighting chance do the guys who follow the law have in Kenya? And this is what this guy says. His name is Obed Okello. And he says, I must have it. That knife. Almost every driver has a knife to protect themselves. Now, if you know a taxi driver, ask them, do they have knives to protect themselves? And what chance do they have with those knives when there are 800,000 guns available illegally in the country? And here's the thing. A knife is the most preferred weapon by criminal gangs in many parts of Kenya. It is not a gun. Over 320 deaths resulted from stabbings from January to June 2018. That's 6 months. 320 deaths. In 2015, the total number of homicides in the country was 2,648. So if you have 320 people dying within 6 months, multiply by 2 just to fill the year, that's 640 people. And that would represent 24% of the homicides in 2015. So criminals use knives. They prefer knives mostly. But what about guns? Because they are still there. 33% of crime victims in the country, they were confronted with a firearm. At that time, the figure, okay, they were confronted with a firearm. There is no specific data, let's say on a year-by-year basis, on gun deaths in Kenya, which is a big problem. Or perhaps I did not find that data. I had a bit of time to research. So perhaps I didn't find it. But it's not readily available. That's what I can say. The reason why most people die when it comes to knife deaths, right, is because guns ensure compliance. It's highly unlikely that deaths would reach, let's say, 500 when it comes to those 33% of people confronted with a firearm. Because as soon as you see a gun, you start complying with the rules. But when you see a knife, you believe that you have a fighting chance, so you fight. And even though there are 800,000 available guns in the country illegally, criminals still find it hard to find those guns. And they prefer using knives. And there are other reasons for that. What's the conclusion that you can get from this? Crime will persist regardless of gun control. People will turn to knives or anything else. Remember, only 33% of the victims of firearms are confronted with a firearm. Of the victims, crime victims are confronted with a firearm. 24%, you can say, or 25 or 26, were through knives. Others were confronted in other ways. So criminals will always use other means. And they can always purchase guns illegally if they want. Citizens have a right, a desire to protect themselves. We all have it. Otherwise, you won't lock your door. Gun laws limit them from responding to threats. Because taxi drivers, they have knives. Because most criminals prefer knives. And those knives give them a fighting chance. Again, yes, they always want a fighting chance. Even if that guy would have a knife, you never know. It's always better to have it, let's say a knife, because you'd have a fighting chance. Because when you don't have a fighting chance, then you die. What happens is that when more guys have guns than let's say the law-abiding citizens, then we have to rely on the government for prevention of crime and for countering attacks. Case in point, the people at Garissa, they had to rely on the government to come and aid them. But if somebody somewhere in that university had a gun, perhaps they could have responded. Perhaps they could have killed one terrorist, or perhaps maimed one terrorist, or perhaps slowed him down. And perhaps the deaths would not have reached 147. But they had to rely on the government. And this is an example that I had. For those guys who have watched Braveheart, if you remember that movie, there was a conversation between Robert the Bruce and William Wallace. And Robert the Bruce tried to tell Wallace that remember that these nobles have lands and castles, and it's too much to risk. William was trying to convince Robert to join with him to fight against the English, but the nobles were reluctant. When it comes to guns in Kenya, or guns in Africa, or guns anywhere in the world, the nobles have lands and they have castles, and it's too much to risk to have poor people have access to their own defense. You'd prefer for those people to rely on you, so you can oppress and abuse them as much as you want. So William Wallace asked Robert the Bruce and the common man on the battlefield, because they were going to battle, does he risk less? Because that man also has a home. That man also has, let's say, a wife. He also has children. Does he have much less to risk than these other rich guys? Because a home is all he has. At least the rich guys, the nobles, they have lands and castles. Why do we give guns to rich people? Why do we give them to Sonko? Why do we give them to Steve Mbogo? Guys who live in posh areas where security is not as terrible as it is in Kayole. Do the people in Kayole risk less? Do they not live in homes? Do they not need security? It's because if you give them guns and they protect themselves, then what of essence is the government to them? Because now they can rely on themselves and they can protect themselves. And the government is there for the security of the people. And now they can provide their own security. So now the government has to answer to certain things. And that's why the nobles are very reluctant to allow the poor to protect themselves. So let us talk about the police. On March 20, 2018, 5 administration officers were imprisoned over the killing of someone, Danson Wachira, who was partying. He was drinking outside Mutudo hours. And he ended up dead at the hands of these police officers. Now people can say, like people are saying about the guards, and uneducated, small time people. These were 2 senior officers and 3 recruits. And this is what they did to Danson Wachira. They killed him for drinking outside Mutudo laws. And these are the people that we rely on. So we say, we don't have to protect ourselves. If we increase the number of arms that the civilians have, then there will be a problem. So let us reduce them. Let the police take care of everything. And this is what the police are doing. And this is just one case. Police and crime. There was a report, I think it was the Economic Survey 2016. It said, according to media reports, that ununiformed officers were involved in 34% of all the crimes reported to the police in 2015. 34% of all the crimes reported to police involved police officers, according to what the media was saying. The volume of reported crime in 2014 was 69,376. In 2015, it was 72,490. So crime was increasing. And police officers were taking part in that crime. Police officers were mostly involved in these kinds of crime. Drug trafficking, criminal damage, economic crimes. Soliciting for bribes, we all know. Like there's a hashtag today, release Njeri. Accepting bribes, accepting free gifts. Handling stolen property. These are the guys who you rely on to protect your property. But they are handling stolen property. They are stealing from people. And they are demanding by false pretense. These are the people we are supposed to rely on. Such that we do not procure guns to protect ourselves from the 800,000 guns already in illegally already in circulation, right? We rely on these guys, but these guys are also a problem. So who do we rely on? The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, it denied this report that police are involved in 34% of the crimes. This is what they said. That in 2014, there were 53 cases of police officers involved in criminal offenses. It went up by 71 to 71 cases in 2015. That was a 34% increase. So my question was, we have 90,442 police officers, and I think perhaps more right now. And only 71 of them had criminal offenses. Who are we kidding? We can defend the government as many times as possible. We can give out false statistics. But the ground, there is something else that is happening. And we have to deal with reality. But we can make up stats as we want. Or we can hide them as much as we want. But they'll get to you one day. So another report, right? This one I got it from the Daily Telegraph. Police shot 67% of the 1,868 people who died from gunshot wounds in Kenya from 2009 to 2014. 67%. That's a lot of people at the hands of police. So you have 800,000 illegal guns walking around in Kenya. And then we have police who have around, I think, perhaps a maximum of 150 guns, police plus armed forces, right? And they're also abusing their guns. So who else will protect you? How else will I protect myself? Because we're in this together. For 63% of those deaths, those ones caused by the police failed to report details of the circumstances of the shooting. So even the story of how you died will not be told. No reason was given whatsoever as to why the officers opened fire in 68% of the cases. So they don't even need to answer for why they're shooting people and killing people. The ones that we have entrusted with guns, the ones that people say they have enough training, to handle guns, they don't even have to say why they shot you. They just shoot you. But again, the nobles have lands and castles, and it's too much to risk. The next deadliest perpetrators were armed robbers, and they were responsible for 14% of the deaths. 14% armed robbers. Who will you fear most? The 14% armed robbers who killed by the gun, or the 67%, the police who killed by the gun? Who are we supposed to fear most? And we are saying, reduce the guns that we have in civilian hands. These guards will have guns legally. 800,000 guns are out there illegally. The police who also have legal guns, they are using them improperly. Who will protect us? You remember the game back when we were young? Police and robbers. And how did the game go? The police went after the robbers and they caught the robbers. That's when we were young. Now we are old or getting older. How does reality play out? Is it like it was in the games that we played? Do the police go after the robbers? Or do the police collude with the robbers? Sometime back, 2 suspected gangsters, they were gunned down in industrial area. Killed again, right? Not caught, killed. And we'll speak about that in future. And a government-owned pistol was found on them. A gun that is in the country legally was found with criminals who had been gunned down by the police and most likely gunned down illegally. So investigation ensued. And what did they find? They found that 5 pistols in, I think, a police station in Kiambu, they were, as per the records, police officers on duty were using them. And these 5 pistols were supposed to be used as exhibits in criminal prosecution cases. And you wonder why judges let go of these criminals. Because now you have 5 pistols supposed to be used as exhibits. They, as per the records, they have been given to police officers to use on duty. So when the case goes to court, what do you think the judge will do? Because if they're on duty and guys are using them, then the forensic evidence that you can get from them has changed, because they have been used again instead of being stored. So the criminals will get away. And the criminals had guns that the police, that was supposed to be the police. So they'll get away in court, and they're using guns on the streets from the police. So two pistols and 95 bullets were recovered from the house of a certain police officer, and that guy was arrested. At least that one guy was arrested. We have 90,000 police officers. How many of them should be arrested for similar incidences? Can we rely on the police when they are committing crimes themselves? Can we rely on the police when they are colluding with criminals? Is it surprising that crime is increasing as they earn salaries? Should we increase our reliance on them? We shouldn't. We should start relying on ourselves for our own defense. But the nobles have lands and castles. There is the Garissa massacre in 1980. And this is what happened during that massacre. The Kenyan government forces, security forces, they were looking for somebody. His name was Abdi Madobe. And they said that he was a criminal, a local gangster. And so they set up within Garissa, around the environs, and they brought everybody, like they did in Kasarani, they brought them to a concentration camp. This time they brought everybody to Garissa Primary School at the football pitch. And they kept them there for 3 days. No food, no water. 3,000 people died. That was the Garissa massacre in 1980. And how did the government do this? Because when the government comes, it comes with a gun. When you fail to pay taxes, it's not a KRA official that will force you to pay taxes. A man will come to you and he'll tell you, you have been asked to pay taxes by this KRA official. Will you pay? Will you not pay? If you say that you'll not pay, then that man with a gun will either force you to pay or will take you to a place where you don't want to go. So you might have to pay. The government always acts by force. It's called a monopoly of violence. And it can only have a monopoly when the other person, the subjects, they do not have, they rely on them for protection. They do not have their own ways of protecting themselves. So in this case, what happened? Somalia, the Republic of Somalia, it threatened to overthrow the Moi government. Because I think Moi had taken over by this time. So what happened? The Moi government released the detainees unconditionally. So when a man is coming to you with a gun and he's trying to oppress you, but another man also has a gun, and perhaps a bigger gun, because Somalia was a bit good at that time, then that man with a gun will pay heed to the other man with a gun, as you will pay heed to that man with a gun that came for you. So you can see that when it comes to security, right, having a man with a gun who is fighting for you, or having a gun for yourself, fighting for yourself, it's kind of like a good thing, because it leads to result. Arming security guards is the first step towards reducing our reliance on police officers. You pay directly for security. You don't pay through taxes. And when you pay directly, you'll ask directly for services, for specific services. Because when you pay taxes, they'll tell you it went to the road, it went to wherever, it went to wherever, and eventually they'll tell you add more. But when you pay directly, you will demand directly for what you paid for. You will demand for it when and where you need it most. The government was checking, let's say, it was there, forcing Miguna to go out of Kenya. It was there checking on political foes. We'll speak about that. Let's see if they will kill us, right? Let's see if they'll kill us. So anyway, Jared says that the guards will kill us. Let us see if they will kill us. So, yes, where you need it most. And where do you need more? Where do you need it most? When you're transporting cash. Perhaps in your home, you feel that you need it most because somebody is threatening you. So you'll have a guard there, providing security directly. And you'll demand accountability for it. Because if there's a slight security lapse, if you find that guy sleeping, you'll call the security company. Now, if you find a police officer sleeping, who will you call? You can fire the security company and then hire another company. You can sue that company for incompetence. When will you fire a police officer? And then, if you have security guards for certain services, because they provide security for people, the rich, the guys who own land and castles. So if those guys have private security guards to do that kind of thing, perhaps we can free police officers to take care of us. Professor Mogambi, right? He argued, right, that there is no data supporting the army of security guards. And I did not find that data, that arming security guards would reduce crime. But I also remember the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. The fact that I could not find data supporting that arming security guards would reduce crime, it does not mean that it would not reduce crime. And let me ask you, where is the data supporting the idea that arming police officers reduces crime? Where do we have that data? Remember, in Britain, the police officers who go on the beat, who patrol, they do not have firearms. Where is security better, in Britain or in Kenya? So where do we have data that arming Kenyan police officers reduces crime? The evidence, the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. Again, Professor Mogambi argues that criminals will avoid areas where guards have guns. So even if you arm guards, right, the criminals will just go to other areas and attack there. By that same argument, he is proving that arming guards actually leads to results. And just think about it. If you have hired somebody to stand outside your home, and that person, the presence of that person with a gun, it deters them from coming inside of your home, from killing your family, from stealing your property, wouldn't you be happy? So yes, the people who have armed security guards outside their premise, out to protect their property and their lives, they would be happy that the criminals went to another area. It would be sad for the people where those criminals went to. But again, we are human beings and we seek to protect our lives. By his own argument, if you advance it further, you'd find that the more the guards have guns, the more places criminals would avoid. By his own argument. And also there's another thing. How would they know that those guys have guns? How would they know? Concealment is an important part. Do we go advertising that we have guards with guns? So criminals would actually think twice, because they would never know if those guards have guns. And that's why you hear people saying that they act as a deterrent. And people are saying, right, that it's easy to get to poor people, to get to those guards, to corrupt them, or to threaten them. And that should tell you something. Perhaps we should have been providing security for these guys from the start. And perhaps now we'll start paying attention to where they live, to the kind of security they have in those areas, and to the kind of security that they need, so that we reduce their corruptibility as much as possible. Perhaps we'll pay attention to the poor. We have cash in transit. Think about it. There was some time back, I think, when Michuki now said that cash in transit, it has to be escorted by police back in the day, armed police, and they would have to have a chase car. It happened because there was an incident where some criminals, they slaughtered some security guards inside a cash transit vehicle. And it was a terrible slaughter. I think even police officers were in there at that time. So Michuki had those rules that now they need to have a chase car. But here's the problem. The more people know about cash in transit, the more dangerous that ride will be. Because if you have 10 people knowing about it, one of them could be corrupt. If you have 20 people knowing about it, then the number of people who could be corrupt, there are more. But you only have 4 or 3 people knowing about when you're going to transport the cash, how you're going to transport it, then it increases security. And so that's why I think one of the reasons why they want to take police officers out of the cash transit business. But then if you take police officers out of it, how will you escort that cash? Because yes, criminals will come for it, and they won't come with leaves asking you to give them cash. They won't even come with a knife. They will come with guns. And when somebody comes at you with a gun, you need a fighting chance. You also need a deterrence. As Professor Mogambi says, people avoid guys who have guns. So you would need security guards with guns. Remember, removing police officers from the equation is important because it increases security. Less people know about it. But then the people now who are left with it, they need the security because you brought those police officers because they have guns. So now you need those people to have guns as well for their own security and as a deterrent. Remember, the police officers were also a deterrent. So anyway, let's go on. Strategic locations like malls, industrial parks, and hotels. Those guys would have, security guards there would have guns. Remember what happens when a man comes at you with a gun. What happened at Garissa when guys came there with a gun? What happened at Dusit when guys came with guns? People started calling other people with guns to come and help them. Guys with guns started responding to the issue at hand. The best defense you have against a man coming at you with a gun is another man coming at them with a gun. The best defense that the Somali people had, Kenyan Somalis had during the Garissa attack, massacre, was the Somali government that threatened the Kenyan government. Because now it was a gun dealing with a gun. And response time matters. That's why everybody who was praising the response by the police, 14 Riverside, they mentioned the response time. And the response time helped to save lives. So now imagine if somebody is coming to attack you and the response is immediate. Just slowing down those guys. Perhaps maiming one of them. Perhaps killing one of them. Perhaps that can save a life. Perhaps saving one life is worth it. So this is the argument by Professor Mogambi and others, that poor people cannot handle guns. They are suffering from stress in life, poverty is bad, and all of those things. And they also say that there will be chaos during the incident. There is an inherent bias in Kenya against poor people. Poor people can't speak at family gatherings. Sit down. Let the people who have money speak. What voice do they have in church groups? At the workplace, the person who always tries to conserve their cash because they don't have enough. How do people look at that person? It is as if the rich aren't thieves in our country. For example, the Ngiritas stole a few millions. The NYS scandal is in the billions. There is an inherent assumption that poor people are stupid, that they easily give in to their emotions, that they don't know how to react to things. It's as if the poor people were the ones who said that kids need laptops when they don't have classrooms. The nobles have lands and castles. They make it seem as though poor people are stupid and they cannot think, because that's the only justification for not arming them, that things would go haywire. But they know that things would go wrong for them, because now the poor can rely on themselves. What guns do is that they bring about respect. And somebody said they lead to a polite society. There's a saying that most people say, he couldn't mess with that guy. Huyo mtu anajiweza. People say, utajua mimi ni nani. What are you actually saying? You actually are saying that you have a way of fighting for yourself. And so you are demanding respect because you can fight for yourself. And that is what guns do. They bring about respect. They lead to a polite society. Because right now, people are starting to see security guards in a different light. They usually saw them as those guys who ask for 10 bob, for 100 bob every day. But now there are guys who can respond to an insult. There are guys who can, they have some kind of power. And so how you treat them you have to watch how you treat them, how you speak to them. You cannot perhaps shout at them as you would. You have to develop some kind of respect for them because they now have power. And you have to think about other things. Where do they live? How do they live? What kind of training do they have? Do they need more training? Perhaps you should give them more training. You start thinking about security guards as you should have thought about them from the start. Because guns bring about respect and they lead to a polite society. And you will become polite when you know that the guard has a gun. Security firms, they're already trying to vet these guys. They want to take their staff through rigorous training. So they're not taking their staff as they would. The training has to be rigorous. The effect, giving security guards guns, it will take effect in 6 months, perhaps by the end of July. And there'll be thorough vetting of guards. Because now you're taking guards seriously, not as you used to take them. Now, imagine if many poor people had guns, how much more respect would we have for them? How much more would we think about their poverty? How much more would we think about their training? Because guns bring about respect. When somebody can protect himself or herself, it brings about respect. The security guards will no longer have rungus alone to protect themselves. Imagine have a police, they are in the station, they move from one place to another. They're not always under a constant threat. But security guards are there from, let's say, the daytime shift and then there's the night shift. They are 24/7, under constant threat. A constant security threat. But they have rungus only. Police officers have guns that they give to criminals. And then they also steal on themselves. The criminals already have 800,000 guns out there. These guys need more than rungus, because the threat to them is 24/7, or let's say it's constant whenever they are there at the station. Give them rungus is unfair. And when you look at the media reports, when a security guys die, you can't even see the names. They don't even mention the names, because who are they? Wait until they have guns. Those names will be mentioned constantly, every time. Professor Hezron argues that he fears corruption, that the police are already corrupt, so imagine the security guards. Fear the police. They are a public entity, and public entities, they foster corruption. It's engraved in them, because you can't fire them as easily, you can't question them as easily. And when they appoint people, they don't appoint people based on merit, based on results. They appoint them based on tribe, based on bribes and other things. Companies, they have to respond to their clients. If somebody was corrupt and they stole from you, that company has to institute measures to protect itself. Remember G4S security, when everybody was stealing through G4S, they had to rebrand. They had to take other measures to reclaim their image, to stop that kind of the thievery that was happening. The government does not have to do that. So when it comes to arming security guards, it will be different. It will not be the same, because this is a private company and it has to respond, because you're paying directly and you demand services. But the government, it has a gun. It has the monopoly of violence. You rely on it. What can you tell it? So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope that it has been informative. Hopefully, yes, thank you for watching. For all the 600 subscribers, thank you so much. Share this video with your friends. If you feel that, if you have learned something, let others learn something as well. So share it. And thank you so much for watching. Tell others about this video and this channel. And subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Goodbye, take care. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.